Hi everybody, welcome back to my biopsychology class. My name is Atwika, and in this video we'll be overviewing about the mechanical senses. So what is mechanical senses? So it actually senses that response to pressure, bending, or other distortion of receptors. And they include touch, pain, and other body sensation, as well as the vestibular sensation. So vestibular sensation, it detects the position and the movement of your head, and also the somato sensation, pain and itch that we will be discussing here. Audition is actually also a mechanical senses because the hair cells are modified touch receptors, but we have discussed it in our previous video in different topic because it considered because of its complexity and the importance of audition. All right, so first we will be talking about the vestibular sensation. So in order to understand what it is, you might try this, try to read a page of a book, while you jiggle your head up and down or back and forth. What happened then? You might find that you can read it fairly easily unless you jiggle your head too fast, But now try another thing. Hold your head steady and jiggle the page up and down, back and forth instead. And in that case, you can hardly read it at all, right? So why that happens? So actually, when you move your head, the vestibular organ adjacent to the cochlea monitors the movement and directs the compensatory movement of your eyes. So when your head moved left, your eyes then move right. And when your head moves right, then your eyes move left. So effortlessly, you keep your eyes focused on what you want to see. So when you quickly move the page back and forth, however, the vestibular organ cannot keep your eyes on target. So that's why. And the sensation from the vestibular organ detect the direction of tilt and the amount of acceleration of your head. And you use that information automatically for guiding eye movement and maintaining your balance. Mice with an impairment of vestibular sensation, they frequently lose their balance and fall down. And they also cannot swim or float because they are often upside down. Similarly, people with impairments of the vestibular systems, they often stagger and fall because they cannot control their movement. The vestibular organ shows in this figure, they are consist of saccule, utricle, and 3 semicircular canals, like the hearing receptors, the vestibular receptors actually are also modified touch receptors. And the calcium carbonate particles that called otoliths, they lie next to the hair cells actually. So when the head tilts in different direction, this otolith push against different sets of hair cells and excite them. And the otoliths then tell the brain which direction you were moving, but they also record which direction of the head tilts when you're at rest. And the 3 semicircular canals, they oriented in perpendicular planes. They are filled with a fluid and lined with the hair cells. And the acceleration of the head at any angle causes the fluid in one of these canals to move, just as the water in the bucket will splash if you jerk the bucket from side to side. So then the fluid then pushes against the hair cells in the semicircular canals, they setting up action potential. But unlike the saccule and utricle, the semicircular canals here record only the amount of acceleration, but not the position of the head at rest. And they are also insensitive to the sustained motion. So if you start forward on a bicycle, car, or airplane, these semicircular canals respond as you accelerate, but as you continue at a steady pace, the receptors stop responding. All right. And then the next one is the somatosensation. So the somatosensory system here include the sensation of the body and its movement. It's not one sense, yeah, but actually many. It's including discriminative touch, the deep pressure, cold, warm, pain, itch, tickle, and the position and movement of joints. So this table, yeah, describes somatosensory receptors, sorry, including those shown in the picture of your right hand here, and other receptors not in the table respond to joint movement and as well as the muscle movements. As you can see from this figure, consider that the Pacinian corpuscle, which detect vibration or sudden displacement on the skin, yeah, and at the center is the neuron membrane. Yeah, it's the onion-like outer structure that provides mechanical support that resists gradual or constant pressure. It thereby insulates the neuron against most touch stimuli. So however, a sudden or vibrating stimulus bends the membrane, it enabling sodium ions to enter, then depolarizing the membrane. The next is the Merkel disc. It's respond to the light touch, such as when you feel an object. Yeah. Suppose you feel object with thin grooves like this without looking at them and try to feel whether the groove go left to right or up and down. Yeah. So actually, the a research already experiment about this. So the experimenter then varies the width of the groove to find the narrowest groove that you can discern. On average, women can detect grooves about 1.4 millimeter apart, whereas men need to the groove to be about 1.6 millimeter apart. That's very interesting, but and if you get past then the next question might be why men and women differ. So unlike many sex differences, this one is easy to explain. It reflects the fact that on the average, women have smaller fingers actually. Apparently, women have the same number of Merkel discs as men, but compacted into smaller area. So if you compare men and women who have the same finger size, their touch sensitivity is actually the same. Still about the somatosensory receptor, our body has specialized receptors to detect temperature, yeah? And it's critical variable to monitor given that overheating or overcooling the body can be fatal for us. And the system for cooling and heating show an interesting asymmetry. So cold sensitive neurons in the spinal cord respond to a drop in temperature. For example, a cell that responds to a drop from 39 Celsius to 33 Celsius would also respond to a drop from 33 to 27 Celsius. Thus, on a very hot day, you might detect a breeze as cool, even though the air in the breeze is fairly warm. So cold sensitive neurons adapt quickly and show little response to a constant low temperature. In contrast, heat sensitive neurons in the spinal cord respond to the absolute temperature and they do not adapt at all. A cell that responds to 44 degrees Celsius will respond the same way regardless of whether the skin was hotter, cooler, or the same temperature a minute or two ago. Yeah, and our temperature receptor also respond to certain chemical stimuli. For example, capsaicin, yeah, is a chemical found in hot peppers such as jalapenos. It actually stimulates the receptor of painful heat. And capsaicin can produce burning or stinging sensation on many parts of your body, as you may have experienced if you ever touched by the inside of hot peppers and then rubbed your eyes. Yeah, it's very, very painful. All right, the next sensation is the tickle. So the sensation of tickle is actually interesting but poorly understood. And why does tickle exist at all? So why do you laugh if someone fingers your armpit your neck or soles your feet. Yeah, actually chimpanzees respond to similar sensation with bursts of panting that resembles laughter as human, yeah. And yet tickling is unlike humor actually. We love humor, but most people don't like being tickled, or at least not for long, right? Laughing at joke makes you more likely to laugh at the next joke, but being tickled doesn't change your likelihood of laughing at a joke. So why can you tickle yourself? It is also an interesting question, yeah. So it is for the same reason also that you cannot surprise yourself, yeah. Why you cannot tickle yourself. So when you touch yourself, your brain then compares the resulting stimulation to the expected stimulation and then generates a weaker somatosensory response that you would experience from an unexpected touch. And actually, some people can tickle themselves, yeah, a little, if they tickle the right side of the body with the left hand or the left side with the right hand. So also you might be able to tickle yourself as soon as you wake up before your brain is fully aroused. And the somatosensation in the central nervous system is explained in this way. So the information from the touch receptor in the head, they will enter the central nervous system through the cranial nerves. Yeah. And information from receptors that below the head, they will enter the spinal cord and passes toward the brain through any of the 31 spinal nerves, that including 8 cervical nerve, the 12 thoracic nerve, as you can see in this figure, yeah, 5 lumbar nerves, 5 sacral nerves, and 1 coccygeal nerve. And the primary somatosensory cortex is essential for touch experience, yeah. Uh, uh, so for example, when a weak, brief stimuli are applied to the fingers, people are conscious of only those that produce a certain level of arousal in the primary somatosensory cortex. So if someone touches you quickly on 2 nearby points of your hand, you will probably have an illusory experience of a single touch midway between those 2 points. So when that happens, the activity in the brain, in the primary somatosensory cortex correspond to that midway point. In other words, the activity then corresponds to what you experience, but not what has actually stimulated your receptors. And the damage to this somatosensory cortex then impairs your body perception. So for example, here, a patient who had damage in their somatosensory cortex had trouble putting her clothes on correctly. Also, she could not point correctly in response to such direction as show me your elbow. Yeah. Although she pointed correctly to objects in the room, they cannot point it correctly in their body. And also one patient had an illness that destroyed all the myelinated somatosensory axon from below his nose, but spared his unmyelinated axons. Yeah, the patient here still felt temperature, pain, and itch because they depend on the unmyelinated axons. However, he had no conscious perception of touch, which depends on the myelinated axons. Yeah. If someone then lightly stroked his skin, he experienced a vague sense of pleasure. Yeah. And recording from his brain indicated that is no arousal of his primary somatosensory cortex, but it increased activity in the insular cortex, which then responds to light touch or other pleasant emotional experiences. So based on this case, evidently unmyelinated axons, they conveyed enough activity to the insular cortex to produce the emotional aspect of touch, even though he had no conscious sensation of touch itself. All right, so The next one, so actually each spinal nerve then innervates or connects to a limited area of the body called a dermatome. You can see in this figure. So for example, the third thoracic nerve, or T3, they innervates a strip of skin just above the nipples, yeah, as well as the underarm area. But the borders between the dermatomes, they are less distinct, yeah. Actually, so each dermatomes overlap 1/3 to 1/2 of the next dermatome, yeah, and the various type of somatosensory information such as touch, pressure, and pain that travel through the spinal cord in separate pathways toward the thalamus, which then send impulses to different areas of the primary somatosensory cortex that is located in the parietal lobe. And and then like the information about the skin sensation then also goes to areas such as the anterior portion of the cingulate gyrus and the insular cortex, that which respond only to the pleasantness of the sensation but not the sensation itself. All right, so many sensations sometimes evoke strong emotion, yeah, but pain here is unique among senses because it always evokes an emotion. And the emotion is unpleasant one, yeah. And pain and depression are closely linked, and people in pain are likely to become depressed and unmotivated. And also, researchers found people who are depressed become more sensitive to pain, yeah. And also, economic insecurity leads to depression and makes a pain feel worse. Even a signal that suggests possible dangers, it will increase his pain. So pain sensation, they begins with the least specialized of all receptors, is the bare nerve ending, as you can check in that figure. So because the axon then carrying pain information have little or no myelin at all, they conduct impulses relatively slowly in the range of 2 to 20 meters per second. And the thicker and faster axons convey short pain, and the thinner ones convey duller pain, such as post-surgical pain. And mild pain releases the neurotransmitter glutamate, whereas stronger pains releases glutamate, but also certain neuropeptides, including substance P and CGRP, or the calcitonin gene-related peptide. And the pain-sensitive cell in the spinal cord, they then relay information to several sites in the brain, yeah. One path then extends to the ventral posterior nucleus of the thalamus, and then to the somatosensory cortex. And the spinal path for pain and touch, they are actually parallel, but with one important difference, as you can see in this figure. The pain pathway crosses immediately from receptors on one side of the body to attract ascending the contralateral side of the spinal cord. And the touch information travels up the ipsilateral side of the spinal cord to the medulla and then crosses to the contralateral side. So consider what happens to pain and touch if someone receives a cut that goes halfway through the spinal cord. Yeah. And in addition to the somatosensory cortex, painful stimuli also activate a path, yeah, that goes through the medulla and then to the thalamus, yeah, and then to the amygdala, hippocampus, prefrontal cortex, and anterior cingulate cortex. And this area react not to the sensation itself, but to its emotional aspect of the sensation. So for example, if you watch someone, especially someone you care about, is experiencing pain, you experience sympathetic pain that shows up as activity in your cingulate cortex and the other cortical areas. Yeah, it's very interesting. So a hypnotic suggestion to feel no pain decreases the responses in the cingulate cortex without much effect on the somatosensory cortex. It means that someone responding to a hypnotic sensation feels the painful sensation almost normally, but react with emotional indifference. But people with damage to the cingulate gyrus, they still feel pain, but they no longer distress about the pain. Yeah. And sometimes we also might say that someone hurt our feelings. So for example, after a romantic breakup, you might say that you feel emotional pain, right? Um, the question is this just an expression, or is emotional distress really like pain? Actually, hurt feelings do resemble physical pain in several regards. So, um, and hurt feelings here can be relieving by drugs such as acetaminophen, yeah. But the downside of taking this pill is um, people also decrease their evaluation of positive experiences. So when under the influence of this acetaminophen, the bad experiences are not as bad, but also the good experiences are also not as good. All right. So how can then we relieve pain? So we would not want to be free from the ability to feel pain, right? Because it is important for us. But people with uh, uh, but we want to relieve it, right? And people with a gene that inactivates pain axon do not know when they're getting hurt, yeah. And it is very dangerous because sometimes they then ignore their injuries and they do not learn to avoid dangers, yeah. So that's why we're not want to eliminate pain, but it's good for us to control it. And after pain alerts you to an injury, you do not need constant reminder, at least not of the same intensity, right? But the brain puts the brakes on prolonged pain by opioid mechanism. Yeah, it's a system that responds to opiate drugs or similar chemicals. The opiates bind to receptors found mostly in the spinal cord and the periaqueductal gray area of the midbrain. And the discovery of opiate receptor was important because it showed that opiates actually act mainly on the nervous system rather than the injured tissue. All right, so other ways of relieving pain is the first one is the endorphin, yeah. So it implied that the nervous system has its own opioid type chemical. So the transmitters that attach to the same receptor as morphine are known as endorphins. Yeah, is a contraction of endogenous morphines. The brain here produces several types of endorphins that relieve different types of pain, such as the pain from a cut versus the pain from a burn. And inescapable pain is especially potent at stimulating endorphins and inhibiting further pain. So presumably the evolutionary function is that continued intense pain accomplishes nothing when you already know about the problem but cannot escape, yeah? So that's why endorphins are also released here uh, during the intense pleasure, such as orgasm or such as when we're listening to thrilling music, yeah. Also enjoyable meals, yeah. It also tends to decrease pain, yeah. Probably here also the combination by releasing dopamine and endorphin as well. And the discovery of endorphin has provided physiological details for the gate theory. Yeah, the gate theory is proposed decades earlier by Ronald Melzack and P.D. Wall in 1965. So the gate theory was an attempt to explain why some people withstand pain better than others and why the same injury hurts worse at some times than others. So according to the gate theory, the spinal cord pain receptors also receive input from touch receptor and from axons descending from the brain. These other inputs can close the gates, yeah, for the pain message, and they do so at least partly by releasing endorphins. You have no doubt noticed that when you have an injury, you can decrease the pain by gently rubbing the skin around it or by concentrating on someone else. That's how to explain the gate theory. And the next one is cannabinoid. It's chemical derived from or similar to marijuana. It blocks certain kinds of pain, actually, yeah. However, cannabinoids also can produce problems of their own, including memory impairment. And research on cannabinoids for pain relief has not been extensive yet. So unlike opiates, cannabinoids act mainly in the periphery of the body rather than the CNS. And the researchers found that if they deleted the cannabinoid receptors in the periphery nervous system of the laboratory animals while leaving the receptors intact in the CNS, cannabinoid lost most of their ability to decrease pain. And another approach uses capsaicin. Yeah, it's a chemical in jalapenos or peppers. Yeah, and it's and similar and similar other vegetable that stimulate receptors for heat. And capsaicin here could be rubbed into a sore shoulder, an arthritic joint, or other painful area that will produce a temporary burning sensation, followed by a longer period of decreased pain. Yeah, but when it applied in high doses or at lower doses for a prolonged period, a capsaicin here then causes an excessive buildup of calcium in heat receptor and damage the mitochondria in those receptors that will rendering the cell non-functional for a substantial time. And the next one is placebo. So yeah, it's a drug or other procedure with no pharmacological effect. Yeah, it often relieves pain, depression, and anxiety. Yeah. And placebo exerts its effect by top-down control of sensation and emotion. All right. So, and the next one is the pain sensitization. Yeah. Some people that suffer chronic pain long after an injury has healed, yeah, and as well as we shall see in the chapter on memory, a barrage of stimulation to a neuron can potentiate its synaptic receptor so that they respond more vigorously to the same input in the future. Yeah, so that mechanism is central to learning and memory, but unfortunately, pain activates the same mechanism here, and a barrage of painful stimuli then potentiate the cell responsive to pain so that they respond more vigorously to similar stimulation in the future. So, so it means that to prevent chronic pain, it helps to limit pain from the start by, for example, taking a medication that relieve pain right before the surgery. And the next one is the itch sensation. Yeah. What is itch actually? What is it? Is it kind of pain? Is it kind of touch or something else altogether? And the answer is actually itch is actually a separate sensation. Yeah. And researchers have identified special receptor for itch and two spinal cord patch conveying itch. There are two kinds of itch that feel about the same, although their causes are different. First one is when you have mild tissue damage, such as when your skin is healing after a cut. Your skin then releases histamines that dilate blood vessels and produce an itching sensation. And the second one is it's because the contact with the certain plants, especially cohosh, yeah, it's a tropical plant with barbed hairs. It also produces itch. So the antihistamines block the itch that histamines cause, but not the itch that cohosh causes. Conversely, rubbing the skin with capsaicin relieves the itch that cohosh causes, but it has little effect on the itch that histamine causes. So the itch receptors are slow to respond, and when they do, their axon actually transmit impulses at the unusually slow velocity of only half a meter per second. At that rate, an action potential from your foot needs 3 or 4 seconds to reach your head. So imagine that delay for a giraffe or an elephant. So you might try lightly rubbing some rough leaf against your ankle. Then note how soon you feel the touch sensation and how much more slowly you notice the itch. Itch is very useful because it directs you to scratch the itchy areas and remove whatever is irritating your skin, right? And vigorous scratching produces mild pain, and pain then inhibits the itch. And opiates actually, which decrease pain, actually increase pain. This inhibitory relationship between pain and itch is clear evidence that itch is not a type of pain. And further evidence is the demonstration that blocking itch fibers does not reduce pain. So the fact that you can feel itch at this time is evidence that it is not just from a form of touch or pain. It is interesting that scratching the partly numb skin does not relieve the itch, but evidently scratching has to produce some pain to decrease the itch. All right. So that's all for our topic in this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again shortly in the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.